Hey, what's going on, world? Welcome back to Forgiven AF podcast. We're a second chance podcast. Super excited to be here today. I got an awesome guest on the show with me that I'm super thankful for giving me this opportunity to do this together. I want to start off real quick and let y'all know kind of what I did last week. It was a new experience, something I'm really excited about. We went to, I applied to be on this show for entrepreneurs. It's a reality TV show called The Blocks in Kansas City. 60,000 people applied, and I made it in the top 30. So I went and recorded a reality TV show. It was an entrepreneur competition. So it was just a bunch of different competitions to kind of see who they would crown the world's best startup entrepreneur. You know, it's a game show, so it's kind of a lot of extraness to it. But it was actually a really cool experience. I learned a lot. I did not win. I'm not allowed to tell who did until the show comes out. But I learned a lot, and it was a really cool experience. So I'll let you guys know when that drops. But as far as today's episode, we got my boy Tim Nicholas on the show. Tim, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
I'm super excited about this. Tim and I met at the gym, I'd say probably about a year ago. We were working out, and you could just kind of catch a good vibe, you know? So we met and then happened to realize that we were both from Philadelphia. So that was right away. There was like a connection. Yeah. And we linked up on social media, and immediately I saw that Tim was putting together a overcoming emotional strongholds workshop. And I was like blown away by that because how important that is, especially like nowadays with all the different stuff going on in the world. And that's why I wanted to bring him on the show, because I feel like that's a really important thing. I think that we need to be able to have discussions about men's health and counseling. I feel like a lot of people are scared of it. So I have some questions here. First, I want to introduce Tim and see if Tim will give us a quick, brief overview of where he's from and how he got into this mental health space.
Absolutely. So, Shawn, thanks for having me on to the show. You know, Forgiven AF is definitely a dope podcast, man. So, shout out to you for everything that you're doing. And, I'm really excited about being on today. Just a little bit about myself. I hail from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was born in Philly, but I was raised in Baltimore. So, shout out to Baltimore that raised me. East Coast guy all the way, living in Texas for 9 years. Love it here. Have a family here, so I love it. And just, I love the fact that we met at the gym, like you said, and just the vibe was dope, just from the day one, pretty much. So just really excited to be on your platform, man, and just to talk through mental health, different struggles, and just really just talk through different things, man.
I love it, man. It's really cool that you're here because we agree on a lot of different topics. You know what I mean? So it's cool to be able to collaborate and do this, because you also have a podcast.
I do.
Called Locks Lounge.
Locks Lounge.
Locks Lounge.
Yep. Just like play off Locks.
Okay, the hair. Yeah.
With the hair.
So Locks Lounge, and it's really cool. I like seeing all the different avenues you go, and I agree with all the different topics you bring up. So
appreciate
you guys are doing good things. Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Let me ask you, how did you get into the mental health space?
Well, to be honest, Shawn, it really got into it just from my own personal mental health struggles. Growing up in my home, a loving home that I grew up in, with my mom and dad, but a little bit dysfunctional at times, no different from the average person having to go through different things. But I recognized I had a loose screw as I was growing up mentally, just based on some of the things that I went through as a child and as an adolescent and into adulthood. With those struggles, of course, going through different things and hurting people that, I really wish I wouldn't have hurt. It really was my own experience to say I need to, really take care of my own mental health. I need to take care of all of my triggers. I need to take care of the emotional problems that I might have had, and then to not deflect those things onto other people. And so that process really allowed me to help other men as well to overcome some of their own emotional strongholds, dealing with isolation, anxiety, depression, and talking through those different struggles. So I did put on a workshop, my first one last year, called Living Beyond the Box, and it was overcoming emotional strongholds for Black men. Now, of course, for not only Black men having struggles, all men have struggles, right?
Yeah,
but specifically for my own people, I really wanted to do that and to push that type of agenda, especially for Black men, like myself.
Absolutely. I love that. And yes, I think that, so these kind of go hand in hand. When you talk about you got it, you realized that you had something wrong and that you needed to figure out how to work through this. How did you know, did someone present the thing like, hey, you should get counseling, or how did you know what options were available, or that there even were options for something like that?
Well, I started therapy at a young age. I was about maybe 6 or 7 years old, just going to therapy and going to a psychiatrist at a very young age, just dealing with some of the mental health struggles, dealing with ADHD as a child, and having that lack of focus, also played into other areas of my life, even as a young child. So that's really how I got into it, was having to deal with therapy then, and even throughout life, and having different issues and different things happen to me. That's where I knew that, and even having advice from family saying, maybe you should talk to somebody. And I'm the type of person where I am pretty self-aware for the most part. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that you have to be self-aware and know that, okay, I know that I'm a good person, but I have issues, and I've struggled with hurting people and doing things that I'm not proud of. But at the end of the day, it's important to have that self-awareness. So that's where it started.
I love that, man. I think that self-awareness is one of the most attractive qualities in any person. You know what I mean? Like, because you could tell the difference between a person who's constantly lying to themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty obvious. Always making excuses for when they've messed up, or that was one of the biggest things for me when I became incarcerated was, all right, I've got like a couple options right now. I can sit here and feel sorry for myself and act like it was the government's fault, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I can become self-aware and I can realize, hey, I messed up. What can I do to be better now?
Yeah.
So the fact that you start, treatment at a young age is probably a blessing, like the way I look at it, because I feel like most men that aren't around therapy, or don't even have that like offered to them, by the time we get older, or they get older, it's now looked at as like almost like a weakness, right?
Absolutely.
Like, oh, you go to counseling, you're soft, you can't handle it on your own, or stuff like that. And I know for myself, I wasn't able to become self-aware or to really until I started going to counseling. Like, I absolutely I'm a huge advocate for counseling.
Me too.
Personal counseling, marriage counseling. My wife and I say all the time, if it wasn't for our marriage counselor, we wouldn't still be married.
That's right.
And because we have blind spots, right? We have blind spots in our life all over the place, whether it's marriage or your own personal life. So sometimes it takes a person without a bias, then that's where counselors are so cool, because they're like, to kind of show you those blind spots. But you also have to be open and willing to be able to take the information in, right?
Absolutely.
This is a big one right here, because this isn't just for the men that are struggling with it, but even for people in the families around men struggling with mental health. What would you say are some signs of mental health struggles?
I would say that some struggles would be, a lack of desire in the activities that you're used to doing. So what if, let's just say, for example, I love to work out, and let's just say you consistently see me in the gym, and let's just say you don't see me in the gym for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Now for me, 2 or 3 weeks, I'm losing my mind if I'm not in the gym for 2 or 3 weeks. And you being a fitness professional and being a trainer and owning your own facility, you understand that if you've gone for a certain amount of time, you start to lose it.
Yes.
But I have been in those places where I wouldn't want to work out due to the fact that I'm, going through a anxiety bout or going through a small depression bout.
Yes.
You'll recognize when people aren't themselves, when they're out of a routine, out of a flow. And we got to check on those people. We got to be observant of the people that are around us, first of all, to even recognize that there is a change and a shift in their behaviors or their patterns and moods and things like that. So I think just making sure that we look at those things, the things that people are used to doing, that's one thing. Seeing, just if their mood changes, if you know that they're consistently, in a place where they're consistently happy or in a decent place, then we want to look at if their mood swings or if their mood changes and stuff. So those are just some of the things that I know that I've recognized, not only in myself, but in other people. And it's really helped them, because then it allows me to even say, hey, bro, what's going on? How you feeling? I haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah.
What's going on? And then that kind of allows, them to feel like they can talk to me in that situation.
I think that's awesome. And you hit the nail on the head too. The number one sign when I was doing some research is lack of desire in things that they love.
Right.
And that's exactly what you went to. Like isolation, which is I feel like it's very similar. Like if you're not doing the things you love and you're isolating, it's kind of similar, but isolation was a big one.
Yeah.
That people do, and they just stop. I know when I get depressed, when depression hits me, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to associate with anybody. I want to just, but that's actually the worst thing I can do.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Because you stay in the house without anything changing, what's going on around you. It's easy to just be stuck in your head and just thinking about negative.
I agree.
Let's see. What do you think men cringe at the thought of therapy? Like, that's a hard one, right? But I know you got a good answer for it.
I would say just being a man, most men will cringe at the thought of therapy for multiple reasons. I would think that a lot of times we are already preconditioned to be the strong one, the strongest. We have to take care of our homes. We have responsibilities. We have all these things we have to do. Therapy is very low on the list of to-dos. And I think that a lot of times we are already just preconditioned to not take it seriously because we're like, listen, feelings, what we got to sit and talk about feelings for? We got to get this money for our families. We got things we got to do. And sitting in this chair talking about how I feel is taking away time from what I really need to be doing, And so I think also we're just not wired to talk about things. And another underrated thing is that we have a hard time trusting other men. We really do. That could be because of ego. That could be because of power. That could be for whatever reason. But we don't find a community of men to feel safe with. And so it's very difficult to open up to other men, let alone a therapist, if we don't have other people in our circle that we could trust with the information that we have. So we got to be able to do that.
That's good. I think it's good. I think a lot of men are scared of, the stuff that has actually bothers them and causes their mental health issues to put it out there because now it could be used again now to hurt them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
So like if I share something with somebody, now they have that firepower against me, even though it's a counselor. But, we don't think rationally all the time about that type of things. So I think that it's definitely people are scared to look weak, to look like they don't have it all together because we put on, like, let's say social media, for instance. You look at my social media, it looks like I'm always happy. I'm always doing fun, good stuff. But on the day where I'm depressed or extremely anxious, something I struggle with is I'm always thinking of the worst case scenario of every situation.
Right.
I'm not posting that on social media. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it just looks like we have it together. So that's I think another thing to be careful with that is we need to make sure that just because someone's social media looks like they have it all together doesn't mean that we don't need to be checking on that person.
Absolutely. And a lot of times the strongest people are the ones we need to check on the most, right? Just because you're the strongest person in the family or the strongest person in your circle, think of all the energy that you have to expound just to be strong for everybody else.
That's good.
And so we got to be able to pour into each other in that way. Now, with a counselor, I would feel as though that's one of the safest places that you could talk to someone. And what that does is it allows you to practice being vulnerable with people outside of that circle of a therapist. So now if I'm vulnerable with my therapist, I can learn to be vulnerable with my family, people in my family. I can be more vulnerable with like my closest guy friends. I could be vulnerable with those people because I'm already practicing that with someone who is non-biased and doesn't know me. But in any type of relationship, we're all at risk to get hurt.
Yes.
All at risk to get hurt. So I would say let's not allow that fear to mess up our mental health if we got to talk through things.
Yeah.
Because we're all vulnerable to that anyway.
No, that's so good. And it's the same. Vulnerability is so important. Transparency, vulnerability. Some of my closest relationships are with men that I can be vulnerable and transparent with.
Right.
Because you form that connection. You have to understand that you might tell them something that's uncomfortable, Mm-hmm. But if you're not, and I like that you said that, because with a counselor, that you're covered by certain, legal things,
right,
to where the counselor can't share your stuff that you tell. Unless you say that you're going to harm yourself or harm someone else, mm-hmm. the counselor has to keep that information. So it's a good place to learn vulnerability, right? It's a good place to start of having to learn to be open. Mm-hmm.
That's real.
I wanted to ask you, what are some remedies that are available to a man that is struggling with mental health? I mean, we've kind of discussed some, but maybe just going further to kind of give people like some actual concrete options.
Better Health BetterHelp is an app that really caters to therapy. I would say that's a good resource and a good remedy to start. Not only for men, just people in general.
Yeah.
But BetterHelp is a good one. That's good for therapy. Really, just therapy is one of the biggest things that I even tell people that I'll probably be in therapy for the rest of my life. And it's not necessarily because there's so many crazy things going on in my life, but it's about maintenance more than anything.
Yeah.
I want to be able to maintain my mental health, my mental stability, where I've known how low I've gotten in certain situations and certain things that have happened in my life. So I know that therapy is going to be huge. Having a community of men that you can trust, that you could be able to share certain things with and share your life with, but be able to hear their stories as well. It needs to be a relational type of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's important too. And just really making sure, even journaling, that's a remedy too. Getting that out, getting whatever thoughts that you have out is super important. I think that if we can talk, if we don't feel comfortable talking to people, at least get it out of your brain. It has to come out in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so I think journaling is something that we got to take time to do, even if it's like 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Right. Or, a couple of times a week, we could just get these things out. So
I love that. The journaling thing is something that I actually want to start working on myself. My wife is an avid journaler, and the way she talks about it, like the benefits that she gets out of it, it's like almost, it's something that I should definitely add in. I have 5-10 minutes a day to write down my biggest stressful stuff, and you know what I mean? It's kind of a way. She kind of uses it as like a prayer language for her. You know what I mean? To be able to like connect with the Lord, like it's a way that and that's another thing. Men's groups, like kind of like when you mentioned having a men's support system.
Yeah.
I really think that is a huge one. When it comes to counseling, do you have any advice? And I don't. So this is one that I'm seriously asking. If you don't, this might not. How would you recommend, or what sort of characteristics, or what should a man look for if he decides, okay, I'm going to go to counseling, and now I need to find a counselor. Now what?
So I've been on both sides of the coin, where I've had good counselors and I've had bad counselors. So I have identified the characteristics on both sides on what to look for and what to avoid.
Okay.
Right. As far as like good qualities and characteristics of a counselor for me is someone who can definitely listen, who truly, surprisingly, there are some counselors and therapists who don't listen, that actually take the time they'll hear your story and things like that, and they spend more time talking and trying to instruct as opposed to listening.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we definitely need both. We need the instruction, but we also need to just get it out.
Yeah.
So being able to listen is very important. Someone who can, I do like experience-based therapists, but I also like therapists who do know their stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to have that blend depending on what you like, right? And depending on what you're going through to be able to relate and connect with your therapist. So I think those are some of the things that I look for. What I also look for as far as just a negative thing is not only the excessive talking, because I'm not big on excessive talking. I'm just not. But just someone who, like, if you're not giving sound advice, if you're just giving me something based off of education as opposed to something that's personalized for me, because you're hearing who I am and my type of personality, I need something that's going to kind of match that, as opposed to, okay, everybody's doing this. This is something that you should be doing. It needs to be specific and relative to my particular situation. I
think that's great, and I think it makes a lot of sense. How about Christian counseling versus a non-Christian counselor?
I like both of them. Okay. Being a Christian man, I've been to a Christian counselor, and I enjoy Christian counselors who provide the biblical aspect of it. But there's also the spiritual aspect as well as the scientific aspect, which is the mental part, right? Yes. So if we can combine those two things, so if you're giving the spiritual and the scripture aspect to the counseling, in addition to also, but what's going on in my brain here? What's going on in my mind? How can I still focus on my healing part? with not only the spiritual aspect.
100%. I'm with you 100%
I
on.
need that mindfulness. I need different things. If you're talking to me about, okay, well, here's some techniques, mindfulness, meditation. If you're giving me different things to really be able to fight these battles and these demons that I have, then that's helpful on both sides. So I think it's essential for both Christian and non-Christian counseling.
I think that's a great analysis because I agree 100%. Sometimes the whole, oh, you're struggling with that, pray about it. Like, don't get me wrong, I love it and I do pray about it, but sometimes I need a little bit more. Like, give me some steps that I can walk through to look at the situation differently, maybe instead of just always just pray about it, or read this chapter in the Bible and pray about it. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll do that and I love it, but sometimes I need more steps that are actually like that I can take, that I can see the like process of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let me see.
I like that.
Just
Yeah, that's like really important. It is important to pray about it, right?
Yeah.
We can definitely pray about it, but I feel like prayer shouldn't be the end all be all. There still needs to be actions. And even, biblically it says, faith without works is dead. So I can pray and have faith all day. Yeah. But what am I doing? What are the steps that I'm taking to improving my quality of life? I have to still do things and not expect God to just come in and just do a clean slate and wipe everything through. I still have work to do.
Exactly. Because if you can come in, we can pray about it and we can change the situation, through feelings. But if we have the same thought processes, we're just going to keep coming back into that same negative spiral.
Yeah.
So that's something that it's definitely worth exploring both avenues. And maybe, like you said, it's okay to have both.
It is.
You know what I mean? It's okay to have both. You can have your spiritual counselor and then you can have your, scientific kind of counselor or whatever, more of just like a personal counseling type of aspect. And I think that's good. I feel like I personally like to have a male counselor as a male because I want to be able to be honest with my counselor about all the different things that I struggle with.
Yeah.
And I'm open with my wife. She knows this, but there's like struggles in my life when it comes to like not sleeping with other women, but being in the gym and just having eyes that wander and stuff like that.
Of course.
And I don't really feel comfortable sharing those type of struggles with a female counselor. Just so I like to have a male counselor for things like that.
Now, the funny part about that, being a man, and for me personally, being a man and having a male counselor, I've had those in the past. And what I have learned is that it's great either way. Like, as a man, to have a man counselor or a woman counselor, right? I tend to go to a woman counselor actually because growing up, there weren't a lot of men in my life that I could trust. And so while I know it would be effective to have a male counselor, but I gravitate more to the woman counselor because, like, I can trust you with certain conversations and things. Growing up in a single parent home with my mom, I'm so used to being able to talk to a female counselor. Now, as the years have gone on and I've gotten older, I have gravitated to a male counselor as well.
Bro, that's awesome. That's so good because we have to look back and think about what our situation growing up and how that's affected. Like, I had a father who I went to for a lot of stuff like that. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm more comfortable with going to it. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. So it's funny when you look back on the situational stuff and figure out, so when it comes to, like, I have a lot of business owners and stuff like that in our circle and a lot of people who in leadership positions in general.
Yeah.
What are some good qualities you think in leadership as it pertains to mental health? Like, for instance, and this is a hard one, right? Because, it's your business and you have to make sure that your business is taken care of. But at the same time, I believe that you have to make sure that people are taken care of also.
Right.
So how do you navigate leadership with, who is under you and still being able to recognize? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think?
I'm also a business owner, just like you. I own an IT consulting firm. And so in addition to hosting the podcast and all that, but I have had employees, prior to the pandemic, I had consultants on different projects and things like that. And whenever their performance would slip, I would, during their one-on-ones, I would ask, is there something going on? Because you're in a remote environment, so you're already isolated from clients. You're already isolated from different people. So my thing would be, what's going on? Is there a change in your life to where your performance has dwindled a little bit? And come to find out, one of my consultants was on the brink of committing suicide. I mean, I had never heard anything like that being a business owner or a boss or anything like that. So for me, and to be young, at the time, I might have been maybe 30, 31 years old, and I'm having to deal with someone, double my age who's going through a mental health challenge such as that. And we already know how suicide has just increased dramatically over the past couple of years with the pandemic, with all of these changes with, the political unrest. There's just so many different things going on to where the suicide rate has just increased like crazy. But how I was able to, deal with that situation was to, connect with my consultant and say, listen, I've had mental health struggles before, and I'm not exempt from them just like you. And being able to connect on a human level as opposed to always staying business like, I feel like being a good leader in that aspect is putting yourself out there and being human and coming down, quote unquote, coming down on that level with that particular person and saying, I'm human just like you. So whatever we need to do to come together to make sure that you're okay, let's do that. That's how my conscience works.
No, I love that because it's super easy to just, oh, this person's work ethic has dropped, fire them. And honestly, something that I just pulled up right here, it talks about signs of suicidal tendencies in men, and it kind of talks about some of the things that some of the main reasons that men have like caused, committed suicide for. Obviously, there's mental illness. One of them is social isolation, which we discuss. The third main one, which makes sense, especially because it talks about 65 and older in men, is really like suicide rate is very high.
Right.
And unemployment was one of them. And I could see that. I could see being 65, not have made all the right decisions, or maybe just not had the right circumstances growing up, starting to get to that retirement age, not feeling ready for it. You know what I mean? And just feeling like you're almost just going to be a burden. And then I could see people taking their lives that way. Like it's super sad, but unable to maintain healthy relationships was one. And a huge one for me, and I'm going to dive into this further down the road, but is a history of physical or sexual abuse.
Yes.
Because I know and I can be vulnerable. I've had sexual abuse issues growing up, and I feel that was something my mom said. My mom always felt like my drug abuse came from self-medicating from past trauma. I was never really comfortable in my own skin, so I could just get high, and then I'm temporarily feel content. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I know that that's definitely something that I could definitely see struggles coming from that way.
Yeah, and I definitely can relate to that, as well. Dealing with a lot of past traumas and self-medicating. I mean, I would get high too, just to self-medicate, and I had to learn the same thing. So while that part wasn't on the brink of addiction, what was an addiction for me was a sex addiction. Yeah. And that's where I always felt like I needed to fill a void in whatever loneliness that I was dealing with.
Yeah.
And I'm open. I talk openly about it because I know that there are other men. There's about 80% of men in the church that struggle with that same thing.
Oh, for sure.
And it's something that we do have to talk about. We got to talk about all of these things and bring them to the forefront, not to judge, not to make you feel judged. Because if we talk about it and make you feel judged, that's going to definitely push you over the brink. And that person's not going to want to live for anything because they already feel as though I'm not accepted.
100%. I agree. I couldn't agree more. And the things that we turn to, like the sex addictions or the drugs or the exploding in anger and hitting, other people, violence.
Yep.
They all come from being a symptom of trying to cure some sort of mental health issue. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But the problem is they then take you down a further spiral of shame. So like, let's say, for instance, my drug dealing, right? When I sold drugs, I wasn't saving money. Like I wasn't selling drugs like this is my career, I'm a drug dealer. I was selling drugs because it made me feel important. It made me feel valued. It made me feel needed by the outside world. And so I had some sort of insecurity inside of me that I was trying to make myself feel better and needed through selling drugs. But what it was doing, and using and selling drugs, but it was doing was causing more and more issues in my life, because now I would have this hole inside of me. I'd fill it with fake things.
Yeah.
The hole reopens. Now I still have the hole, and now I have shame behind doing the things.
Right.
It's the same thing with like pornography or like sex addiction. You temporarily feel like you're going to do something to make you feel better, but then afterwards you don't feel better. Now you feel worse because you've messed up and you're still, you know what I mean?
It's a whole cycle, man.
It's a big cycle. Yeah. So
I agree with you, man.
let's see here. Let me go real quick with the last thing I wanted to bring up. I want to go through these 8 ways to convince your spouse, or it doesn't have to be a spouse, just a friend.
If it's a spouse, let me know, because hey, I'm about to be in that same seat as you soon.
Oh yeah, congratulations on that and getting married. That's gonna be awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's
it'll be March 2023. So
that's awesome.
We're gonna be So I'm gonna need these 8 tips.
So and I was also we're married in March too, so our anniversary is March.
Really?
So
March what?
26th.
Okay.
That's when we got married.
Okay.
2017. So.
Oh man, so it's coming up soon.
Yep, it's
6
coming up
years.
soon. Yep, and she's such a blessing. Like, I don't deserve her, so it's really cool.
Man,
I'm lucky.
that's what's up, man.
So here's 8 ways that, and this is coming off of something that I found, this very well mind, but 8 ways to convince your spouse to go to counseling. One is to be open and honest with them about what you see in them and their struggles, right?
Yeah.
But then to also not play the blame game. So it's not, I'm blaming you for the stuff that goes on. It's like, hey, babe, I see that you're kind of struggling with this, and I love you, and I want to see, like, is there a way that maybe we could go together, or, just a gently, as I guess is the way.
I like that.
Let them know that you love them. I mean, I know that seems pretty obvious, but I know that if my wife comes to me with an issue and is like, babe, I love you and I want to talk about this, it definitely helps me, rather than, I can't believe you did this, you need to get help for this. No one, like, you start yelling at me and tell me I need to do this, I'm turning off right then.
Absolutely.
So I think it's another one is to not to get defensive or offensive when they do. Mm-hmm. Because the first couple times you bring it up, as men, we might feel attacked. We might feel like, why are you coming at me with this? Because we all have this desire inside of us to be perfect. Mm-hmm. We don't reach it, but then anytime someone brings up anything that is maybe like a flaw of ours or something, it's very easy to get defensive because we want to, maintain that perfection.
Absolutely.
So another one was be clear with your motives. Make sure that you're letting them know, this is for you. I want you to be healthy and happy. This isn't for me. This is, you know what I mean?
Right.
Another one was to set clear goals. And then the last one was choose a counselor together. And be willing to explore a couple options. If your first option of counseling, if it's just not the right person, don't give up on counseling. Try again. You know what I mean? Try to find another counselor, maybe. And probably not to be open-minded, I feel like, when you pick a counselor, because there's a couple times where we've gone to counseling and it was like this lady who I thought at first was like, this little like nerdy lady is not going to be, and I hope she doesn't hear this, but anyway, she's been the most amazing counselor we've ever had. Like, she's literally been life-changing in our relationship. But at first I was like, this lady hasn't been through, she don't know what I've been through, but what she does know is what she's doing, and she knows how to help people in these situations. So that I thought that was a good one.
If I could add on,
Please.
I like the fact that you said, I think it was number 5, which is be clear with your motives. And for me, that's so important, because it's okay to come to me and say, hey, I see that you're struggling in something, right? But my love language is words of affirmation. So if you're telling me that you see something, or you see that I'm not in the best place that you normally see me in, or I'm not in an optimal place, but you're telling me you care for me, you're telling me that I want to see you do well because I see you slacking in this, and this, but you say it in a loving and respectful way, I'm much more open to hearing that I need to change up some things.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So let me know your motives is so important.
The setup,
Absolutely.
The setup, yeah.
The setup, yeah. Because that way it's like, listen, I love you, you're great, this, that, and the third. However, I see you need help because of this, and this. And I'm much more open to therapy.
I love that. I think that's awesome, because it's so true.
Yeah.
One more thing I want to talk about is we come across people all the time, and I'm going to give you one example of kind of what I mean. like you pull into a gas station and you see a homeless person there, right, or whatever, and they're asking for money and they're clearly struggling with whatever might be drugs or alcohol or something like that, and it's easy to get into judgment phase. And I know that this is kind of like an extreme option, but what I want people to do is to have some empathy towards other people, as far as that person might have, let's say they were sexually abused for years as a kid, right?
Right.
And the only way that they were ever, because they were never exposed to counseling, they were never exposed to any sort of help. The only thing that they've ever found that's worked for them is drug addiction. And drug addiction is a huge one when it comes to people that have had issues growing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To turn to drugs because it's such a... But the problem is now these people don't know how to get out of that situation, because they don't know how to live in their own skin. So I guess all I'm trying to say in that is I know that I used drugs for a long time to help me cope with my mental health.
Right.
So if you have even a kid if there might be someone in your family and you're just like, man, how can this kid, why is he still doing drugs? This is ridiculous. Maybe it's deeper than a drug problem, I guess is kind of.
You're right, absolutely right. I think it's multiple things at play here. Look at yourself, right? You grew up from the mean streets of Philadelphia. Where are they even pushing mental health facilities or talking to therapists or psychologists? Where we from my hood, You're not really talking about that, right? Mm-hmm. Now being here in Mansfield, where you have different, for example, we have different locations where that's actually it's more of a welcome thing, so to speak. I would say from that aspect, we need to be able to reach out to certain people who have been through certain things, starting with the church. Like the church could be a good place to even start with that too. But just recognizing, like you have resources in front of you. The question is, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired?
That's true too.
That's the biggest thing, because sometimes being in that vicious cycle of shame, that's a huge thing. So
yeah, no, that's good. That's really good. Man, this has been awesome because I know that there's so many people that need this. Mm-hmm. Like this is a topic that some people get uncomfortable with it, and some people, but the benefit of what you get out of working on your mental health, it changes everything. Your relationships around you, the jobs that you have, you know what I mean? It's just the confidence that you can build in yourself again, to be happy to make eye contact with people again. Like people lose that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's, and also I want to put out there, if anybody is struggling with any sort of like suicide or anything like that, they do have that 3-digit number now. You can just call 988. Yeah. And say, which is cool, instead of having to memorize that long phone number. Yeah. So just be willing and be there. If you have someone who comes to you and starts willing to discuss something with you, they're opening up and being honest and open with you. So make sure that you give them the attention and the respect that is due there, and not kind of blow that off. Yeah. Because I lost a friend, a couple friends now, to suicide, over the years. And sometimes you might not have any idea that it's coming up. So it's really just being aware of what other people, or how they're acting and what's going on in their life,
I agree. A lot of times we won't put on the I'm struggling face, and and I'm sorry that you lost a couple of friends to suicide. It's definitely a difficult thing. I had a friend of mine who lost his mom to suicide a while back, and I know how it affected him. Yeah. As far as so many unanswered questions, and how could he have been there for his mom? How could he have helped? And
people start blaming themselves.
They start blaming themselves, and thinking that they were the problem and they were the burden, and we just want to be there to help and support in any way that we can. And that's the message that we got to get out to people: is you might be struggling, but your life does matter. So we got to talk about whatever it is that will help you stay 6 feet above.
Yeah. Hey, man, that's really good. Real quick before we wrap this up, can you let all our listeners know how they can find you and get in contact with you or follow you? Because you always put out great content. I would love for my listeners to be involved with what you're doing also.
I appreciate that. Your followers can find me at Locks Lounge Podcast, LOCS Lounge Podcast. So they can find me there. My IG is also I'm so _sophisticated 215. And they can also reach me at Facebook, Tim Nicholas, and same thing, the Locks Lounge Podcast.
That's perfect. Man, I really, really appreciate you doing this, man. This has been awesome. It was even better than I thought it could be. You have so much to offer, man. Keep doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, even with the way that you raise your kids and that the way you throw your kids on social media with you all the time, and like the way you rep, you know what I mean? Like, because there's so much more to life than just us. You know what I mean? It's about what we can do to benefit others.
Likewise, man. I love to see you and your son doing your thing. Y'all going to the golf courses and everything else, man. And I love what you're doing in the community too, man, with the youth. So shout out to you big time for everything that you're doing. You and your wife, beautiful family, beautiful couple, man. So doing your thing.
Thanks, man. That means a lot. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it. So y'all, if you know anybody struggling with any sort of mental health issues, or share this podcast, you guys, like, please, this is more than just for me or for like my show. I know that there's so many people that could benefit from this, the benefit of counseling, the benefit of knowing that being vulnerable and transparent, how important that is. Also want to remember, hey, Second Chance Mentors, our nonprofit. If you guys have any resources or any way that you could help, please go to secondchancementors.com. And there's a contact us, there's a donation tab. We're definitely, resources are necessary to continue our mission. So if you guys have, any capabilities or ability to help in any way, we love that. But other than that, thank you guys for listening. We love you guys, and there's nothing you can do about it. And we're here if you need us. forgivenafpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you guys. Boom.